Hey, what's going on? I'm Mr. Sandman. Today I'm going to be explaining some of the features of which I would like to see added into the next Halo Wars. Some of them you may have already heard of, but many others you will not have. By the way, if you haven't done so already, you should check out the other videos in the 4-part series. The first one explains what Halo Wars could have been, and the second one describes how the final game fared up. In this first section, I'm going to focus on what I want to see in the campaign of Halo Wars 2. First off, I want to see a much grittier campaign, a more desperate struggle. In Halo Wars, it was too corny and fun, with very little moments of urgency.
Lady, I haven't got all day. You want to be rescued or not?
Everyone seemed to have taken their chill pills and nothing really seemed to matter. It played almost like a Marvel movie, where everything was pretty much just a joke.
Huge bag of weed. Is everything a joke to you? Funny things.
Listen well, brother.
I'm listening.
And for the record, I would have kicked your ass the first time if the lady hadn't stopped me.
Although it was pretty sad when Forge sacrificed himself, it wasn't a heart-wrenching moment. This was because throughout the whole campaign, it had just been cheesy one-liners, meaning we as an audience had no real investment in his character.
Open sesame.
Also, that little sexual tension between Anders and Forge wasn't really explored, wink wink, but that's probably to keep its PG rating.
I've been really trying, baby.
However, audience ratings mean little these days when you have parents buying R18 games like Black Ops 3 for their 12-year-old son. So how could the campaign become less of a child's story? Well, first, it could show some blood and gore. It wouldn't have to be excessive like Gears of War, but just some here and there would add some nice effects and immersion. Another thing they could add to the campaign would be to have some missions where glassing is taking place, much like you see in Halo Reach. But I want it to be more than just a backdrop for a mission. Perhaps a mission could take place where you have to evacuate civilians, not like Arcadia City, but it's too late for you and you ultimately die in the glassing. If done correctly, it could be as powerful as a moment in COD 4 when you die in an atomic bomb. A further way to increase the sense of urgency in the sequel's campaign will be to show some elites slaughtering humans. While glassing could be personal if they showed a squad you care about die, showing lots of this from afar lessens the audience's investment in the people being killed. That's why I think it would be an extremely interesting representation of the Halo lore, and so very different from anything the previous games have shown. If I had to show a comparison of what I'm trying to get at, it would be in this live action advert for Halo 3.
Package retrieved! Need immediate evac! Over!
I'll link it below in the description if you're interested. Yet another parallel could be taken from a moment in the book, Halo: The First Strike. Blue Team must erase the location of Earth before the Covenant glassed them to smithereens. This feel may be difficult to pull off in an RTS, but I'm sure it could be done. The next thing that I think should be included into the campaign should be the splitting of the campaign into playing both sides of the war, the humans and the Covenant. This is akin to the different missions that you played in Halo 2, where you played as both the Master Chief and the Arbiter. The same kind of thing happened with Halo 5, except I prefer the more distinct differences that we got to experience when we played as the Arbiter and then the Chief. Like for instance, with the Arbiter we got to gain an insight into the inner political turmoil that was happening between the Brutes and the Elites.
Politics, how tiresome.
We have always been your protectors.
These are trying times for all of us.
Whereas with the Chief it was very much black and white as you tried to save humanity and the galaxy. Yet another thing that should have been explored more in Halo Wars' campaign was the Flood. So in the sequel I think this should be given more time, like for instance we meet a Gravemind. But I don't want them to be rescue missions like a lot of the Flood levels seem to be. The Flood are a unique enemy, so they shouldn't just be ignored like they have been in Halo 4 and Halo 5. A further thing that I would like to see added into the next campaign would be an expanded group of characters especially for the Covenant. I feel like just having the Arbiter and the Prophet of Regret wasn't satisfying enough. Perhaps they should add an undertow of the Brute Chieftain trying to vow for the Prophet's acceptance in Halo Wars 2. It is early on in the Human Covenant War where the elites have the power.
On the blood of our fathers, on the blood of our sons,
We shall grind them into dust!
This would be an interesting thing too, as it's kind of like an evil underdog trying to prove that the Brutes can be more useful to the Prophets than the elites. Then we could have the Flood/Gravemind as another race to add into the campaign mix. It would provide an added grievance for both sides. This would be awesome to see an actual character like the Gravemind just as we saw in Halo 2. It could be explored in a much more visceral manner, however. There is one negative thing that comes with having too many characters in one game. That being the many diverging subplots becomes too complicated, so perhaps a choice would have to be made as to who should be explored the most in Halo Wars 2. In this section, I want to talk about some general things that I want to see in the sequel that could be applied to both the campaign and the multiplayer. Firstly, there is the graphics. I cannot believe how the alpha version, which was shown in 2007, had better graphics than the final release almost 2 years later. I mean, you can see the difference for yourself. Another thing which I mentioned in a previous video is the improvement of the group functionality. What I mean by this is the way it rotates between units across the map in Halo Wars. For instance, the constant switch between reactors, but also allow the ability to create your own custom groups. For example, you could have a group with just air in the selection. The applications are endless. Moving on, I think that the UI should become more in-depth with the ability to do more things with it. That may come in the form of button sequences, like press A then B to do such and such, but I'm not too sure if that would become too complicated though, but it's an interesting idea. Another big thing is the ability to have more units on the field and a larger population in general. I think another thing that would be a welcome addition to the sequel would be the ability to zoom in on the minimap. This could be done through a separate screen called Map, or where only half the screen is taken up. Either way. I am not talking about what was in the first game, where you could choose to have the minimap zoomed in or out. It looked terrible zoomed in, a bunch of coloured blobs, and did nothing to help you. Branching off from that, we have what I would call a useless but awesome functionality. I want to be able to zoom in really far to see all the detail that hopefully is in each unit. It would just be a cool little thing that would make me like the game even more. For a point of reference, here is me zooming in Halo Wars. Now here's what I would like to see in Halo Wars 2. As you can see here, Dawn of War does this very well. Hey guys, thanks for sticking to the end of the video, and be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss the final part of the series. In that video, I'll be discussing what I want to see in the multiplayer section of Halo Wars 2. Also guys, don't forget to check out the video description to see links to the other parts of the series, and also some interesting links to things featured in this video. Thanks again guys, cheers.